to my video demonstration of the squat technical model. First, I'll talk about the two different types of back squat that we use. Then I'll talk about the safe rack and bar setup, and then we'll talk through the technical model of the lift itself. So we can differentiate between a high bar and a low bar back squat. The high bar back squat is a more knee dominant exercise compared to the low bar back squat because the higher amount of trunk, the lower amount of trunk lean that is required to maintain balance in the high bar back squat shifts the line of force backwards to around about the mid-thigh, creating equal length moment arms from the knee and the hip, and therefore making it equal amount of force generated by the hip and the knee, as opposed to the low bar back squat that requires a greater amount of trunk lean, which shifts the line of force forwards towards the knee, creating a longer moment arm for the hip, and therefore making it a more hip dominant exercise. So that's the main difference between the two lifts. One of them is more knee dominant compared to the other, and that is the high bar back squat. And for the purpose of this exercise and demonstration, we're going to talk through the high bar back squat because certainly it's a more widespread exercise than the low bar back squat. Right. The rack should be set up so that the bar sits around about the height of the armpit, and that's to allow safe unracking. So it allows us to unwrap the bar without having to extend onto our tiptoes, and also prevents having to perform an excessive hip and knee flexion when stepping underneath the bar. If weight plates are used for the exercise, then they should be secured with clips. Once the bar and the rack has been set up, then we can adjust our grip, and grip width is usually around about a thumb's length into the knurling on the bar, but primarily determined by the athlete's shoulder mobility. What it needs us to enable to do is to retract the scapula so that we can achieve good thoracic extension and so that the bar can rest on top of the trapezius throughout the lift. And if athletes have less flexible shoulders, then they might require a wider grip for them to allow the scapular retraction that is required. So for me, grip width is about a thumb's length into the knurling. Once we've adjusted our grip, we step directly underneath the bar with both feet completely flat against the floor. Ankles, knees and hips are bent. The spine is in a completely neutral position with the scapula retracted. Good thoracic extension and lumbar lordosis is therefore achieved. And the gaze in this position is straight ahead. As mentioned, the bar sits on top of the trapezius. And when we're ready to unwrap the bar, we take a deep breath in, perform the Valsalva maneuver, and powerfully extend the ankles, knees and hips until the bar clears the rack. Once we have extended the ankles, knees and hips, we exhale and take 1 to 2 steps back to clear the rack. Once the rack is clear, we're ready to adopt the start position. So starting at the feet, we should position them approximately shoulder width apart, with the toes pointing slightly outwards, and a good reference point is 11 o'clock on the left foot and 1 o'clock on the right foot. And that's to enable us to access the external rotational capacity of the femur about the hip joint as we descend through the eccentric phase. In the start position, the weight distribution is through the midfoot. The ankles, knees and hips are completely extended. The spine is in a neutral position with the scapula retracted and the chest held up. Gaze is straight ahead and the gaze is straight ahead. When we're ready to perform the eccentric phase, we take a deep breath in, perform the Valsalva maneuver again, and this is to assist us with the trunk rigidity because it increases intra-abdominal pressure. So to initiate the movement, we unlock the hips and in a controlled manner, we descend with the knees tracking along the line of the big toes. The eccentric phase is complete when the femur breaks parallel with the floor. At the bottom of the squat, the weight has shifted from the midfoot towards the forefoot. The spine is completely neutral, the chest is held up, the bar is pressed firmly against the trapezius and bent across the back. In this position, when we've achieved the bottom position, we're ready for the concentric phase. And for the concentric phase, we drive powerfully through the heels, leading with the chest and with the knees tracking across the line of the toes. The concentric phase is complete when we've reached complete extension of the ankles, knees and hips. What's important is that the movement is led with the chest so that there is no breaking at the hip. Once the concentric phase is complete, we exhale and then we're ready to re-rack the bar. To re-rack the bar, we step forward towards the squat rack until we make contact with the rack, then we flex the ankles, knees and hips, place the bar back in the rack and move from underneath the bar. And that is the technical model of the high bar back squat. So the squat is a key exercise in strength and conditioning. It can be used in multiple periodization phases with different set and rep ranges. And primarily is a leg and trunk exercise. And as mentioned earlier, depending on the bar position, we can emphasize more hip extension or more knee extension development. The main coaching points to remember for the back squat is that the knees should be tracking along the line of the toes in both concentric and eccentric phases. The chest should be held up at all times to ensure that and the scapula retracted to ensure that the spine remains neutral. And that concludes this video. Thank you very much for watching.